Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Down the Tee Tennis Podcast. And it's been quite a while. That's mostly my fault. I got a bit busy, so we abandoned it. I think we promised a review podcast for every Masters 1000 tournament, and then failed to deliver. But we're back to review the French Open, and not to review, to preview the French Open. And I am joined, as always, by Ewan West. How have you been doing, Ewan?
I've been doing well, thanks. I've been enjoying the tennis. Been able to catch quite a bit of it over the last few weeks, obviously, since we last talked just after Monte Carlo. So enjoying the clay court season. As we mentioned, it's always a great part of the year, and looking forward to the French Open.
Yeah, and you're doing an internship, aren't you, with Tennis Head? So you're getting to do a fair bit of coverage of tennis at the moment. Is this the first Grand Slam you'll be covering since you started?
Yeah, this will be the first Grand Slam I'll be covering. Yeah, I started just before Miami. I think the first time I did was Rotterdam, and then so I did a couple of those events in Miami. But this is the first Grand Slam I've covered, so I'm excited for that, and been enjoying writing about tennis, like doing coverage on a regular basis. So it's been good.
Yeah. So just before we get into us preview, we're gonna bring you up to date with the results since we last recorded. So the main ones to talk you through: the ATP 500 at Barcelona. Raphael Nadal beat Stefano Tsitsipas in the final, three-setter in the final, a competitive match, a really good match I've heard. I didn't actually get to watch it, but another encouraging week for Tsitsipas as well, because obviously he was coming off that Masters 1000 title in Monte Carlo. Since then, we had the Madrid Open, where Alex Zverev prevailed over Matteo Berrettini in the final. A really good week for Zverev. He came through some incredibly tough games, including beating Nadal on clay. But I think Nadal got his own back around a week later. He won the Italian Open at Rome, as he tends to do. And once again, came through a really strong draw to do it. That final was a Nadal-Djokovic classic, and Djokovic, he was very competitive, encouraging signs to see that Nadal came through in 3 sets. So, Ewan, the tournaments in recent weeks, what have your observations been, and has there been any food for thought that you're taking into your predictions from them?
Yeah, there's definitely been some interesting results and interesting performances that'll have an impact on how we see the French Open. It's been a really interesting start. I mean, in Barcelona to start with, the first one after Monte Carlo was a really interesting tournament. You had Nadal saving a match point in the final of beat Tsitsipas. I mean, in a fantastic final, possibly one of the best matches of the year, definitely in best of 3 sets on the ATP side. And it felt like a big win for Nadal after he hadn't played that well in Monte Carlo, losing to Rublev in the quarterfinals, and he did actually battle his way through a little bit in Barcelona. So to come back from the brink like that and win against Tsitsipas, he was flying at that point, obviously coming in off the Monte Carlo title. He's probably, arguably, you could say he's been possibly the player of the clay court season. Maybe you could say Nadal's just edged it now with taking the Rome title. But that was a good week to start things off. Then, as you said, in Madrid, Zverev winning the title was really impressive. Seems to love the conditions there. Obviously, he's won it before in 2018, and he had a great win against Nadal in the quarterfinals and Thiem in the semis. I think it's probably fair to say those two weren't at the best in those matches, but Zverev was still very impressive. And again, in the final against Matteo Berrettini, who had a great week, Zverev there, he came from a set down and he showed some good resolve there. When Berrettini was playing it seemed like there was some demons for Zverev in that first set tiebreak. We saw the double faults come back, but it felt like a big win for him. It was actually his first Masters 1000 title since Madrid in 2018. So it'd been, even though he'd been in some finals, it'd been a long way for him to win a big title. So that's a big one for him going in, and a big result for Berrettini on the clay. Then in Rome, I think, as we discussed at the start of the clay court season, that's usually where you might see Nadal and Djokovic not at their best towards the start, but as you get closer to the slam, particularly at Rome, it's an event they've been so dominant at, and there again, you see them both in the final, playing a fantastic final. As you said, it was a classic Nadal-Djokovic match, probably the best one I think we've seen in a few years, probably since that epic that played at Wimbledon in 2018, and they both had some fantastic wins on the way. I think Nadal saved match points to beat Shapovalov in the third round. Then he had a great win against, like you said, revenge against Zverev. Djokovic I think came back from the brink against Tsitsipas. You served for the match against him. He had a really tough match in the semis against Sonego, who had a fantastic tournament. The Italian at his home event, he had a brilliant run there. So there's a lot of really interesting things to take there. And we had Tsitsipas just picking up the ATP 250 in Lyon last week just to continue his great form heading in. So there's been a lot of interest in developments on the ATP side.
Yeah, I think one of those interesting developments as well is Casper Ruud. He made the semi-final of the Masters in Madrid. He picked up a title at the Geneva Open. He looks just a ready-made clay court player, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot to mention Ruud. Yeah, I mean, as you say, semi-finals in Madrid where he beat Tsitsipas. Obviously, I mean, what a great win that looks when you look at what Tsitsipas has done at all of the other three events he's played, 4 events he played. I mean, to beat Tsitsipas in straight sets that he didn't face a break point, and then also obviously he'd already made the semis in Monte Carlo and he made the semis in Rome last year. So he's made the semis already at the 3 Masters 1000 clay court events. Didn't play Rome this year. He took the week off. Then he went to Geneva and won the title. Was really impressive there. He beat Shapovalov in the final, and he's definitely someone to watch out for at Roland Garros. And he's had a great clay court season already. I think like we expected.
Yeah, and then moving on to the WTA side now. Once again, there's the main ones are a WTA 500 and 2 WTA 1000s. The 500, the Stuttgart Open. Ashley Barty won in 3 sets in the final over Anya Sabalenka. Quite a strong draw there by the looks of it. You also have Svitolina, Halep as your other semi-finalists. Pliskova in the quarterfinals. So a very strong draw for a 500 there. Sabalenka then managed to pick up a title in Madrid for WTA 1000, beating Barty in the final. So a reverse result, a 3-setter. But then we had a less competitive final in the Italian Open in Rome. Iga Swiatek completely dominant over Karolina Pliskova. A 6-love victory. I think Pliskova only won 13 points in total in that match. So just what have your observations been of the last few weeks of WTA action?
Yeah, also a lot of interesting things, and I would say probably the same with possibly some favourites for the title establishing themselves in the same way they did on the ATP side. The winners of those big events, firstly, as you say, we saw the 2 back-to-back finals between Bari and Sabalenka. I think they've already played 3 times this year. They met in Miami as well, and that was a really good 3-set match. So it's just an interesting rivalry developing there, possibly heading into the French Open, and they were all really high-quality matches. Obviously, you had the events in Stuttgart and Madrid, but interesting ones on the WTA side. You have 2 events. You'd say probably the conditions aren't too similar to Roland Garros. Obviously, Stuttgart being indoors, Madrid, obviously with the altitude playing quite a bit quicker. But I mean, I think those 2 we're going to see at Roland Garros, as we'll come on to you, as 2 of the real contenders. But definitely impressive in those conditions, and I think still on more standard clay court conditions. And then, yes, Swiatek, I mean, destroying Pliskova in the Rome final was, I mean, just an unbelievable performance. And I mean, when you see that sort of scoreline between 2 top players, it has to be a combination of one player absolutely at the best and the other really having a terrible day. And that's what it was. I mean, there's no question. It was a horrendous match from Pliskova, but I mean, I was seriously impressed with Swiatek. Obviously, she'd won a title at the start of the year, just in Australia. But yeah, I wasn't quite expecting that, even as I don't think we've quite seen that level from her since last year's French Open. And I think we've seen back in Rome and similar conditions to the French, why she's outlined herself really as, I think many are now saying, as the favourite for the title. And then another just one was Coco Gauff winning the title in Palma last week, her 2nd career title, first on clay. That was a really impressive week for her. She only dropped 1 set in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Coco Gauff starting to look very, very assured across all surfaces, and I think will definitely be a talking point at Roland Garros, as she was on the grass at Wimbledon a couple of years ago. Becoming more solid, I believe. She's less of that prodigal teenager now and more of a just solid tennis player all round. But moving on to his preview of Roland Garros, the French Open, and starting with the top half of the draw on the men's side, and I think the one word for this is stacked, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, first time ever, the big three have all been in the same half of a Grand Slam draw, which, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that it's never happened before. But, I mean, I suppose it's no surprise because so often you have two of them will be the number 1 and 2 seeds. But yeah, I mean, to have Djokovic, Nadal, Federer all in the same side, and it's the breakdown of Grand Slams won in the top half is 59. If you like, because Marin Cilic is in there as well, he gets that extra one in the bottom half. There's just one, which is Dominic's team. So I mean, it's pretty crazy to see something like that. But there's definitely going to be a great opportunity in the bottom half for possibly one of the next gen or one of the younger guys to get to a final.
Yeah, just on the top half of the draw, we'll say quarterfinalists. Who are your quarterfinalists if you had to pick?
Yeah, quarterfinalists. So for the first one, I've got Novak Djokovic against Matteo Berrettini. I've got Rafa Nadal against Andrei Rublev in the top half.
Yeah. I think I've got the exact same. Expect Rublev to be very strong on the clay courts. Rafa Nadal is just an obvious pick, really, isn't he? I mean, as much as I'd love to pick Federer, I just, I can't. He went out in round 1 in Geneva. He's just returning from injury. I'm sure we'll see him have at least one late run in a slam this year if he plays Wimbledon, maybe even the US Open, but I don't think it'll come at Roland Garros so early in his recovery. I know that Djokovic, he's the world number 1, the deserved world number 1. He'd probably have about 5-6 Roland Garros titles if it wasn't for playing in the same era as Nadal. He's a very good clay court player. He's just unlucky that he's come up in the generation of the very best clay court player of all time. But then the bottom half of the draw, like you say, a lot less stacked. Just a 1 slam title on this side. But how are you calling your quarterfinals?
Yeah, so quarterfinals for the bottom half, I've got Alexander Zverev against Dominic Thiem and Stefanos Tsitsipas against Christian Garin. I'll come on to those. I didn't really go through the top half properly. The thing behind it was just mainly Djokovic. I think he's got a pretty good draw. I think you look at Humbert, Goffin, de Minaur, the most likely players you'll have to beat to get the quarterfinals. I can't see that being too much of a problem. And then Berrettini, slightly tougher one. He's got Auger-Aliassime in there, maybe Kevin Anderson. As we mentioned, Federer potentially, but as we said, I think it's just a bit too early still for Federer to have a really deep run, particularly on clay. I think you would be really happy if he got the 4th round and played Berrettini, but I'll just expect Berrettini to have the edge there, and especially with the form he's shown on clay. And with Nadal, he's got a pretty good draw. I mean, he's got Sonego possibly early on, and then in the 4th round could have Sinner, which would be a tough one, but I would still expect him to come through it. Obviously, they played a really good match in Rome a couple of weeks ago. Monfils, Ramos, Vinolas in there as well, but I think it'll be Sinner. And then Rublev. Rublev's got a tough draw, but Basilashvili, and then either Karatsev or Schwartzman in the 4th round, which I would expect Karatsev to probably beat Schwartzman. He's already done it twice this year, including on clay in Madrid, and I think that would be a great match, potentially Rublev against Karatsev in the 4th round, but I'll probably just give Rublev the edge. Yeah. So then we're moving into the bottom half. Yeah, Zverev against Thiem. I think Zverev's got a pretty good draw, really. I mean, you'd have Mute or Dan Evans potentially, I think 3rd round, which, I mean, wouldn't be an easy match, but I'd expect him to come through. I think in his first 2 rounds, he's got only qualifiers he could play, so it's not really an early banana skin from there you wouldn't expect. In the 4th round, it would be a little bit tougher. It would be either Bautista, Gut, Nishikori, or Khachanov. All dangerous players, but I just think with the form Zverev's shown in Madrid and Rome, I think he would be a bit too strong on clay for those players. And the team is a bit more difficult. Obviously, he had quite a bad loss in Lyon to Cam Norrie, as well as Norrie was playing. He deserves a lot of credit for that. But you got the semis in Madrid and looked quite good, and then 3rd round in Rome, we lost the Sonego team. But it's just, I'm not entirely sure where he's at right now. But I still just got him to come through there. He doesn't have an easy draw. I mean, he would potentially play Casper Ruud in the 4th round, and Fanini and Del Bonis before that, Del Bonis has been in good form. Fanini hasn't been, but obviously he's very dangerous on clay. I think it would be Thiem and Ruud in the 4th round, which a tough one to call the way Ruud's playing, but I'll probably just, if Thiem plays his way in and gets to there, I'll just give him the edge to come through that one. And Tsitsipas, definitely, I'm pretty confident on Tsitsipas to get the quarterfinals. He's got in his section quarter. John Isner could be a tough one, but Isner's got Querrey up in the first round, which I think there's no guarantee who wins that one. It's pretty much a 50-50. Got Pablo Carreño Busta maybe in the fourth round, but I don't think there's going to be any problems for Tsitsipas the way he's been playing. And the bottom section is a really tough one to call. I've gone with Garin, who had a really good run in Madrid. He's obviously a junior Roland Garros champion. He's a good clay court player. You've got Medvedev in that section as the second seed, but he's obviously never won a match at Roland Garros. And I'm not sure I could see him coming through the quarterfinals, especially he's got probably the worst first round draw you could get in Alexander Bublik. I mean, he's, I think, 37 in the world. He's having a great year, pretty good on clay. He's unpredictable. And Medvedev's not exactly been enjoying playing on clay, if you've been following any of the things he's been saying or doing on court in the last few weeks. So I'm not sure he's going to come through there. You've also got Dimitrov, Apelka in there. I'll give Dimitrov a chance, but I'd probably just say Garin's the most reliable bet to get through to Tsitsipas in the quarters.
Yeah, I think the number 2 seed in both the men's and the women's draws, I don't think are at all fancied. I feel like I might be making this up, but there used to be a different approach to seeding in Grand Slams where the results on the surface that the slam was played at was factored in. And if that was still a thing today, I don't think Medvedev would be anywhere near the number 2 seed. And I think Nadal wouldn't be as far down as the number 3 seed. It seems ridiculous that it is that way around, to be honest. But that's just the way things are done, and it's blessed us with an incredible top half of the draw, and then this really open bottom half of the draw, which I think I'm finding quite tough to call myself. I think I'd probably back Zverev to get through that top section. Just looking at the other names in there, the other seeds are Evans, Kachanov, Bautista Agut, and despite Evans, that great run he had in Monte Carlo, I don't think that's enough to really back him in a Grand Slam against a player like Zverev. I think that'd be a third round match. And then Bautista Agut, I don't think of him as playing his greatest tennis on clay, really. Kachanov, he blows hot and cold a lot, so you've got to really back Zverev through that. But that second quarterfinalist in that next section, I am leaning more towards Casper Ruud at the moment, and Dominic Thiem is one of my favourite players in world tennis right now. Definitely one of my favourite overseas players. Like, I always back British players because that's just how I've always been. But he's probably one of my favourite overseas players ever outside of the big 3. But I still feel like he's quite early in his comeback. He did have a strong run in Madrid, was it, where he made the semi? Or yeah, it was Madrid. But I just haven't seen enough yet to really back him. So I might lean more towards Casper Ruud, but hoping typical, with the way my predictions are, that I just get made to look an idiot and Dominic Thiem goes and dominates and makes a finalist. You'd probably, a fully fit Dominic Thiem in this bottom half of the draw, you probably not only call him as the quarterfinalist, you're calling him for definite as the finalist from it. But right now, there's just that little seed of doubt. Tsitsipas has looked very strong on the clay. Like you say, Isner also had a surprisingly good run on clay. It's not somewhere he's been great in the past, but he seems to have made some great improvements on the surface. Tsitsipas just stands out to me in that section as the best clay quarter. Francis Tiafoe, surprisingly good clay quarter, but once again, I'm not expecting him to really come through Tsitsipas. And that bottom section, obviously, you removed Medvedev, despite him being number 2 seed, from the equation pretty much. And I'd probably agree with you that Christian Garin is probably where I'm leaning there, just because of his history on this surface. Dimitrov is obviously another name you're looking at, and he's not a bad clay quarter, but I'd probably, if you told me to try and pick between those two, and I do think it is mainly a pick between those two out of that section, I am probably picking Garin. But moving on, so from the quarterfinals forwards, who's making your semis?
Yeah, so I've got Djokovic to beat Berrettini. I think, yeah, Berrettini's in great form, but I don't think that's necessarily a great matchup for him against Djokovic. I think they played at ATP finals a couple of years ago, and just that the backhand pattern I think is definitely a problem for him. With he's improved his backhand a lot, Berrettini, but it is still limited, and I think going up against the greatest backhand probably of all time, and everything else that Djokovic brings, particularly on a slower service, I don't think it's ideal for Berrettini. Djokovic playing pretty well. Obviously, playing in the second Belgrade this week. He's already in the final as a record. He'll probably win that. So yeah, I think I like Djokovic to come through the semis, and Nadal to beat Rublev as well. I think probably get revenge for that Monte Carlo loss. I think we'll see a much different Nadal this time around. Not that Rublev can't cause him problems, but I just think, yeah, in best of five at Roland Garros, Nadal would be a bit too good at this stage for Rublev. I would have Zverev beating Dominic Thiem, and yeah, picking up kind of on what you said, a fully fit and at his best, Dominic Thiem would probably be the one you'd have making the final through that bottom half. And he does have a great record against Zverev. I think he's something like 9-3 against Zverev. Obviously lost that one in Madrid. And yeah, it was a tough call for me for Thiem just to come through that one against Ruud. I'm still not 100% sure, but I've just gone with Thiem, and I would think if he did get through, maybe Zverev would just about get the better of him. He's got a lot more matches under his belt and a bit more confidence. I think Zverev right now are probably fitter as well. Still not sure exactly where teams are coming back from that injury. And in the bottom one, yes, I'd have Tsitsipas beating Garin for sure.
Yeah, I've got Djokovic to beat Berrettini as well. Pretty much just picking up on the same things you said. It's an easy one to pick, that Djokovic Nadal semi-final. There could be a surprise along the way. It's nothing's guaranteed, but I feel fairly certain as I can be in this kind of thing, that will be the semi-final of the top half of the draw. I'd have Zverev to beat Ruud to move into the semis, and I think Tsitsipas to beat Garin. So that's my semi-finalists: Tsitsipas, Zverev, Nadal, and Djokovic. But what's your final, and how are you calling it?
Yeah, well, my final would be Nadal against Tsitsipas. So I'd have Nadal just to come through against Djokovic in the semis. I don't think it would be the same match we saw last year in the final. I mean, obviously, you never know what can happen, what Rafa is capable of at this tournament. But I do think we'll see a stronger Djokovic. But Nadal would probably be a bit too good. I would say 4 sets probably, if we had to say. Yeah, I think Tsitsipas would just get the better of Zverev. I mean, that's a tough one to call. It really could go either way. But I just think Tsitsipas has been playing so well, and is arguably been the second best player on clay this year after Nadal. I think he would just about get the better of Zverev in the semis. Really, really tough one, but he's got a pretty good head-to-head against him, and I think he's going to really like these conditions. So coming through the final, I couldn't bet against Nadal. I think it would be a fantastic result just for Tsitsipas to get to his first Grand Slam final, and obviously he's got a fantastic opportunity to do it with the draw and playing arguably the best tennis of his career, definitely on clay. But I do think Nadal would be too strong in the final, and to obviously would be his 21st Grand Slam to put him top of the list, and his 14th Roland Garros. I mean, obviously he's never lost a semi-final or a final, so I mean that's another reason I just can't overlook him. And I don't think he's got any worse since last year when he won the tournament without dropping a set and played probably one of his best ever finals.
Yeah, I think I'm calling it a Nadal straight sets victory in that semi-final. I just feel like, I mean, I know Djokovic has taken sets off Nadal on clay very, very recently, or a set at least, but I think at Roland Garros, when everything's going right for Nadal, he's on another level completely, and we've seen complete dominance in finals from him against top players in the past. So in that semi-final against Djokovic, I'm having Nadal in straight sets. Zverev Tsitsipas, I'm a little bit torn on this one. I originally predicted Zverev to have a bad year. I thought that there's a few things rumbling off court that may affect him. He's not always shown to be the most mentally strong player, and that really may take its toll. But he's come out, he's proved me wrong. He's looked really strong this year, so I feel like as long as his second serve holds up, and he's not giving away too many free points, I think I may bet back Zverev to get into that final. But then once again, I think Nadal versus a next-gen player in the final of Roland Garros. I'm calling it pretty much the same way you did with Tsitsipas. I think it's probably a straight sets victory for Nadal, but a great experience for Zverev to get another Grand Slam final under his belt against the toughest Grand Slam final that you can possibly have under your belt as well, against Nadal and Clay, and just have that experience. But we'll move on to the women's draw now, and the top half of the women's draw. What are your initial observations from that?
Yeah, I mean, it's I've gone with Bari against Svitolina as the quarterfinal, and yeah, I quite like Bari's chances to come through her little section. I mean, it's not an easy draw. I mean, Ons Jabeur early on, then possibly Coco Gauff or Jennifer Brady. I mean, there's some tough matches in there. Obviously, an informed player, and Gauff. Jabeur is good on all surfaces. Brady, obviously a finalist at the Australian Open, but I don't think she's quite the same player on clay that she is on hard courts, and not been in great form. So I don't see too many problems there for Bari. The form she's been in, all the matches she's got under her belt. I mean, she has been, I think, a worthy world number one pretty much post, well, even you could say including Australian Open. She didn't have a bad result there. I think she's having a fantastic year. Great player on all surfaces. So I think Bari to come through, and Svitolina is good on clay. I mean, she's made the French Open quarters 3 times. She doesn't have a bad draw. I mean, it's not easy. Krejcikova early on, he's been in quite good form. Alexandrova possibly, and then it'd be either probably Pliskova or Mukova in the 4th round. I mean, Pliskova obviously got to the final in Rome, and I mean, yeah, I can't see how her confidence will be in good shape after that loss to Swiatek, winning, as you say, I think only 13 points. I mean, she was completely destroyed, and she doesn't have a good record at Grand Slams in recent times. Pliskova, so I would possibly even say she could lose to Mukova before that. I just think Svitolina is probably the most solid player on this service out of that section. And then for the next one in the top half, I've got Maria Sakkari against Iga Swiatek. I think the Sakkari section is a tough one to call, really, because you've got Elise Mertens in there, Jessica Pegula, who's been having a really good year, Sophia Kenin, who's obviously the finalist from last year and the 4th seed. But I mean, I think she's 0-3 on clay this year, and she's really not had a good year, Kenin. And she's also got Ostapenko in the 1st round, which is, I mean, it's just a terrible draw. I mean, obviously Ostapenko won the title in 2017, and she's such a dangerous opponent, particularly when there's no expectations on her. So I think she would probably lose that, Kenin, if Ostapenko turns up anywhere near her best. And I just think Sakkari could come through that. Again, a good player on all surfaces. She's had good results on clay in the past. I think her only title was on clay, and she's reached the semis in Rome. So I think it would be between Sakkari and Mertens, but I'll just give the edge to Sakkari. I think Mertens is probably a better player on hard courts. And Swiatek, yeah, I think she's got a good chance of coming through part of the draw. I mean, obviously the defending champion, she's got to be flying high after how she played in Rome. I mean, she saved a match point on the way to the title, but then once she got through that, I mean, unbelievable in the final and the semis. And I just think she has pretty potentially a tough 4th round match in Garbine Muguruza, who I would have had as one of the main contenders for this title before the clay court season actually started. But she's had some struggles with injuries. Muguruza, obviously a former winner of the event, and she's not really been able to carry on the fantastic momentum she had at the start of the year. Obviously having fantastic results at pretty much all the hard court events. I think it was in Charleston she picked up that injury. It's been stop-start since then. But if Muguruza can come through that, it would be a tough one between those two in the 4th round. But I think just you'd have to give the edge to Swiatek at the moment.
Yeah, I think I've been in my pre-season predictions podcast and in the Australian Open preview podcast. I always kind of underrated Barty, saying that the lack of tennis she played in 2020 is going to count against her. But although she didn't win the Australian Open, she got very deep, and I think she proved those words wrong. And she's continued with strong results. I don't think that's a relevant point at all from me anymore. It may have been relevant in the past, but not anymore. And I think she's been strong at Roland Garros in the past. She's picked up a title here, so I'd have Ashley Barty to make it through. I've actually gone with Pliskova to meet her in that quarterfinal though, just because despite that result against Swiatek, I'd still say, well, at least it's a strong clay court tournament under a belt to get to a final. So I'm gonna give her a quarter final here. Hope she proves me right. I need some good predictions to come in for once. And then the bottom half of the top half, quite difficult to call. Kenin, it depends where she's at with kind of her recovery. She's had an operation, hasn't she, this season? So you never know. But she's probably still quite early in the recovery from that. So just a couple of wins, a bit of match fitness under her belt is probably a good tournament for her. I think I'll probably agree with you that Sakari comes through that section, but like you say, Mertens is also a big factor there. I'm in the bottom section. I've got to back you because, well, her results on clay, winning the title last year and also backing it up with strong showings this year. I just think she's standing out as a clear favourite despite being the 8th seed, which I suppose at least she's a seed this year. So you can't really complain that she's seeded quite low compared to last year. But looking at the bottom half of the women's draw, just what are your predictions there?
Yeah, so I think the bottom half is extremely difficult. First of all, it's just I did find this one tough, but I've got for the first quarterfinal Pera Kvitova against Arina Sabalenka. Kvitova's section of the draw. She's got possibly Rybakina early, and then it would be either Serena Williams or Angelique Kerber in the fourth round. A lot of great champions in there, but you'd say all of them probably clay is the weakest surface by some margin. Particularly for Serena, 3-time French Open champion, but at this stage of her career, definitely obviously isn't. I wouldn't expect to be as much of a threat at this Grand Slam as the other three. And I think Serena might come through the fourth round. Obviously, we haven't seen great signs from her in the clay season so far, but maybe to be expected. She only played 2 tournaments post the Australian Open on clay. I'd probably give the edge to Kvitova there, who made the semis at the French last year. And Sabalenka obviously has been in fantastic form. Like I mentioned earlier, I think she's more suited to faster courts and the type of clay court tournaments like Madrid and Stuttgart, but I still think she's good enough to come through this part of the draw. And she's, for me, the strongest player in that section. There's Pavlyuchenkova, then potentially Azarenka or Paula Badoza, who definitely shouldn't be overlooked. He's had a really good clay court season, made the semifinals in Madrid and won a title, but I would just have Sabalenka to come through there. And the bottom section for me was the toughest one in either draw. I've got Veronika Kudermetova against Kiki Burns, but I'm really not convinced by that one. Kudermetova's section to come through, he's got Amanda Anisimova, then potentially Bianca Andreescu in there, who that would have been who I'd have picked, but I think she just, there's so many question marks over her fitness. She obviously played a tournament this week and had to pull out before the quarterfinals with injury, and it's kind of been ongoing for her since the Australian Open and since she made the Miami final where she had to pull out hurt. She's had a lot of physical issues, and I just wouldn't really. I think she is the best player in that section. Just physically, I don't know whether right now I can see her winning 4 matches without getting injured. I really hope she does, but for that reason, I can't really go with Andreescu. There's also Bencic and Konta in there, who I would say are 2 very good players, but neither of them have been in great form this year, and particularly clay is the worst surface. I've just got Kudermetova, who's had a good clay court season. Won the second event in Charleston, made semi-finals in Istanbul, and I think she made round of 16 in both Madrid and Rome. So some pretty consistent and impressive results there. I think she would just get through that one. She's got a tough first round though in Anisimova, who's made the semis here before, and the bottom one was really tough. I've gone with Kiki Burns, who's a former French Open semi-finalist, but she's barely played this year. She's had some injury problems. I just think in that section she's got Herzog first up, which could be a tough one. Then Garcia, Bondrasova in there, those two are very good clay court players, but haven't really shown much recently. And we've got obviously Osaka at the bottom. I was tempted to go with Osaka through there, but I mean, obviously we just haven't seen a lot from her on clay. I would probably just, if Burtons is fit, which I'm assuming she is, maybe she's just been trying to be 100% this tournament. I would just have Burtons to come through that one, but not convinced.
Yeah, I think I've gone with Kvitova Sabalenka as well for that first quarterfinal. Once again, I'd really like to pick Serena. In fact, if it wasn't for recent results, I probably would have picked Serena. It's clay, you can it's an easier surface on the body, so you can go for it a bit more without risking injury. And I think late in her career, although clay's never been really a best surface, she's always been solid on it, but it's never been her absolute best surface. I think at this stage in her career, it could become a good surface for her, but it hasn't really showed in results so far in the clay court season. So you've got to go with form, and Kvitova probably comes through that. And then once again, going with form, I've agreed with you on Sabalenka because, well, as much as you say, the conditions are going to be different at Roland Garros, it's still, a proven track record on clay courts so far this year. No matter how different the clay courts will be, I think you've got to pick her as your favourite from that section of the draw. And yeah, I mean, Bianca Andreescu, she did put together a few good results a couple of weeks back, but then just that's when the fitness doubts started, wasn't it? And have continued since. I mean, it's not when the fitness doubts started. This year has been a return from injury since the start for her, but it did look like she'd started to return, and then sadly we've just seen some injury problems come back, and it makes this section of the draw really difficult to call. I might just go with the seeds here and pick Bencic. If you take Andreescu out of the equation, then the next seed is Bencic. So I'll pick Bencic. I'm not going with the seeds in the bottom section though, because that would mean picking Osaka, and we just haven't seen results from her. So we'll go with, I'm going to go with Kiki Burns for my Section 8 quarter-finalist. So quarter-finals forward, how are you calling it, Ewan?
Yeah, so for quarterfinals, I've got Ash Barty to beat Svitolina. I think it should just be a little bit too good. And I think you see with Svitolina, she has a lot of solid runs at slams, but seems to hit a wall around fourth round quarters. She's made a couple of semis, but it seems when she comes up against a real top player, she can be outclassed, and I would say that'll probably be the same there. And I'd have Swiatek to beat Sakkari. I think, yeah, just the form Swiatek's in, I can't overlook. I think that would be a great run by Sakkari to get that stage, but I think Swiatek would just be a little bit too strong. And then I would have Sabalenka to beat Kvitova. Again, I think that would be the best run for Sabalenka in the slam. She's never made it past the fourth round, which is one of the reasons I was a little bit reluctant with it. But I think the draw is really good for her, and if she gets to that stage, I think she'll be playing great tennis and she'll be tough to stop. And then I've got Kudermetova just to beat Burtons. I'm really not convinced with this section. It's just Burtons, I think, would do great to get that far. It's just I'm not 100% where she's at physically, and Kudermetova just in good form. I could see maybe her having a good run to the semis there. And then in the semis, I've been deliberating on this one, this first top semi-final, but I've just gone with Swiatek to beat Ash Barty in the semis. I mean, it's a really tough one to call for me. Obviously, I think they've only played once, and it was early this year in Madrid. Barty won it in straight sets. I mean, it's a really tough one, and no woman's actually defended the French Open since 2007, which was Justine Henin when she won it three times in a row. So I mean, there's not been recent history of this event of defending titles. Particularly, it's not easy to do, but I just think she seems to have a great mentality, and she seems to have really hit form at the right time. And I think, as I mentioned, with how great she was in Rome, I think she really does like these slower clay court conditions, the classic clay court conditions you're going to get at Roland Garros and Rome. I think she might just have the edge on Barty, who obviously won the title the year before. But mean, that's a tough one to call. And then I'd have Sabalenka to beat Kudermetova and come through to a first Grand Slam final just to be a little bit too strong. Sabalenka, I think, with the run she'd have had to get at that stage, she'd be a bit too good there. And I'd have Swiatek to beat Sabalenka in the final, which I think would be a great final. I think whoever comes through that top half semi-final of Swiatek and Bari, that I would expect. I would expect the winner of that to go on to win it. Yeah. Sabalenka to make a first Slam final would be a great result, but I would just edge with Swiatek to defend the title.
Yeah, well, I think I'll go with Bari to beat Pliskova to make the semi-final, and once again, I think I'll have her meeting Swiatek in that semi-final, much like yourself. But then you know what, just to keep it interesting, just to make sure there's some difference in his predictions, I think I'll have Bari to come through Swiatek. I'll pick that on the accounts of the points you mentioned, that that Bari in the previous meeting won in straight sets, and that no woman has defended the French Open for a long time. So I'll have Bari as my finalist, beating Swiatek in the semi-final from the top half of the draw. Or the bottom half of the draw, I might have to go with you here, not create any difference, because I think Sabalenka is just the one that stands out in her results so far from the clay court season. So I think I'll pick Bertens to beat Bencic in the very bottom quarter, Sabalenka to beat Kvitova in the second, in the whatever it is quarter. And then Sabalenka to come through that semi-final into the final, where she's going to lose to Bari. I agree with you. Whoever wins that top draw probably wins the tournament. But I think just coming off the back of that, I just want to pick up on one discussion point. We've referenced it already. The two number 2 seeds maybe shouldn't be number 2 seeds based on clay court results. Naomi Osaka, Daniil Medvedev. Do you see either of them turning around the fortunes on clay?
I wouldn't rule it out during their careers. I mean, obviously they're both still pretty young, and I mean they're great players. I think if they really want to figure it out and leave no stone unturned in being the best clay court player that they can improve. And I'm not saying whether that will be enough to win the title, but I think it could certainly be the difference between them losing in the early rounds and seeing them regularly maybe making the quarterfinals and some semifinals. I mean, and I think it's an interesting one, the comparison between the two. Because I think certainly maybe in Osaka's case, not as explicitly expressing it, but Medvedev certainly has made it clear how much he doesn't enjoy playing on clay, and now he's just looking forward to Halle. Which, I mean, it's funny. It's good to see be so open and honest, but I think it's probably fair saying with both of them that they haven't fully committed to improving on clay as much as they could. And it's never going to be their best surface. I mean, you can see with if you just analyze their games, obviously they hit the ball pretty flat. It's just not suited to how they like to play. But I think they can have a lot more success than they have had so far in their careers. I mean, we've seen it with players in the past who really haven't been natural players on clay, but they've still embraced it and really tried to get the most out of the game. We've even seen with Andy Murray would be one example, and even guys, I mean, like I guess Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg. I mean, you just said genuine grass court players, not suited to clay, made the finals and the semi-finals. So I think that they're great players. They can figure out. Hopefully, they will in the future, but I think this tournament might be a bit too early for them.
Yeah, I suppose a couple of other little discussion points to round us off nicely going into the tournament. The Grand Slam race, you know, I don't want us to get into a GOAT debate because it's been done over and over again, but the leader of the Grand Slam race, which is obviously only one metric to compare the big three, you know, and there's plenty of others, that's likely to change based on pretty much who everyone's tournament favourite is. Nadal would move from being level with Federer on 20 up to 21. Would it be strange for you to see someone else on the, you know, with the most Grand Slam titles in tennis history?
It would be, I guess, because it's been so long. I mean, obviously since Federer went past Pete Sampras's record at Wimbledon in 2009, where he went past 14 to under 15, and since then it's been Federer, and for most of that time he'd been out on his own by some margin. Obviously he's been reeled in by Nadal. Nadal was always fairly close, but he's finally reached him last year, and I think Nadal will go past him. Djokovic is obviously still very much in the conversation, given he can win at least 3 of the 4 slams and being a bit younger. But yeah, it's I would expect Nadal to go past and maybe even win another. So it is a big metric in the GOAT debate, and obviously something that, as you say, it's been done a lot. I mean, maybe someone could do when they all retire. It's still a tough one to call though, but it could be a historic moment after the final Sunday.
And I suppose a nice place to end it would be with a British angle. So we've seen strong results from both Cam Norrie and Dan Evans at different points of the clay court season. Who goes the furthest out of those two for you?
I'll probably just go with Cam Norrie. I'd say most likely. I think he doesn't have too bad a draw for the first couple of rounds, so I could see possibly Norrie. I mean, he's made 2 finals in the clay season, obviously in Lyon and Estoril. Really impressive results from him. I mean, Evans, I think he could win a match or two, but he would have Corentin Moutet coming up in the second round, who I think he really doesn't enjoy playing against. So I mean, they both seem to get under each other's skin, kind of aggro-wise. I think he doesn't enjoy the matchup either against a lefty who is similar in some ways in game style to me. Really, I think on clay, I'll probably give Moutet the edge in that one. So I think you could see Norrie possibly being the Brit that goes the furthest.
Right, and I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So it's been really nice to be back and to be joined by Ewan again. We'll definitely be back post tournament for a Roland Garros review. I keep getting preview and review mixed up for some reason. A Roland Garros review. We have talked about doing a mid-season review, not a mid-season, a mid-tournament review at certain points with the bigger tournaments, but that hasn't happened yet. It may be something we'll look into doing. It might not be, but we'll definitely be back with a review of Roland Garros in a couple of weeks' time. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to another French Open, and you know what? Maybe some surprises for once.